Welcome back to the Messy Reformation. My name's Jason Rice, and I'm the Associate Pastor at Bethel CRC and Chaplain at Central Wisconsin Christian in Waupun, Wisconsin. My co-host is Willie Cronky. He's a member at Pease CRC in Pease, Minnesota. We're just a couple of guys who love the Christian Reformed Church and want to see Reformation happen in our denomination. But we realize that whenever Reformation happens in the history of the church, things get messy. And after the last couple of synods, and as we move into this rebuilding phase of the Reformation, things continue to be messy in the Christian Reformed Church. So we're taking the opportunity to have conversations with pastors and leaders throughout the Christian Reformed Church to find out what's going on in our denomination, but also to talk about what Reformation and rebuilding might look like. If you haven't already, take a moment to click subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming content. We're dropping episodes every single Sunday evening. It's also important for you to know that you are our marketing plan. We rely on you to spread the word about what we're doing at the Messy Reformation. We rely on you to share our content, and we also rely on you to give us 5-star reviews and provide good feedback for this podcast. You can also support us financially on Patreon or Substack. All the money raised is used to build the platform of the Messy Reformation. With all that said, we're going to get to this week's episode, which is part 1 of our conversation with Shaun Furniss. Okay, well, Shaun, thanks for coming on the podcast. We're excited to be having a conversation. Why don't you just kick us off and tell us about yourself and your family and the church that you're at?
Yeah, well, my name is Shaun, and I serve at Trinity CRC in Sparta, Michigan. And I'm married to my wife, Amanda, and we have 3 kids. There's Isaac, who's 10, Abby, who just turned 7, and our youngest, Levi, who is 5. And my wife, Amanda, she grew up here at Sparta. And we are loving serving here at Trinity.
That's amazing. And what's your role there?
I'm a co-pastor. So it's a unique kind of dynamic that we have here. So Pastor CJ DenDulk, he has been a minister here for about 35 years. And I served here at Trinity starting back in 2010 after I graduated seminary. And when I initially came, I served as an associate pastor with a focus primarily on youth. And I served in that capacity for right around 4 years. After that, I took a call to North Street CRC, which is in Zeeland, Michigan. And I was a senior pastor there and served there for about 7.5 years. And then I had heard about this position at Trinity, the church I had served at prior, and they were looking for a co-pastor. And that's kind of a concept, I think, that is relatively new to a lot of churches, but especially within the CRC church. And what it is, well, Pastor CJ and I co-pastor. We split the responsibilities 50-50. So we still have a morning and evening service. So if he's in the morning, I'm at night. The following week, I'm in the morning, he's at night. We just kind of leapfrog each other. With our catechism classes, we split those down the middle. And then we also equally do pastoral care. We try to split that. I may focus more on pastoral counseling because of my background, and he might be more on the more general pastoral care visits. But overall, we do what we can to split the responsibilities of the church equitably and try to care for this beautiful church we both get to serve.
Yeah, amen. And so what is your background then that has you kind of doing more of the pastoral counseling aspect?
Well, kind of going back a little bit, I did not grow up in the church. I think my first experience with the church was when I was in 2nd grade and some classmates were talking about going to school on Sunday. And I thought that was so weird. Why are you going to church on Sunday? It was Sunday school, right? And they said, no, we're going to church. And I remember asking my dad, who was a nominal Catholic, and I said, well, what's church? And he goes, well, it's where you go to worship God. And so I said, well, can we do that? And so he dropped me off at the local Roman Catholic church, gave me a quarter, said, put that in the plate when they pass it. And I was there for the Mass. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was in awe of it. It's this transcendent experience. If you've ever seen a mass like that, and I was
Yeah.
just enthralled by it. And so I uh, was very much involved there, altar server, their CCD and stuff. But then we got to the time of confirmation, and confirmation is where it's their version of kind of making a profession of your faith. And they gave us Bibles as we were going through this class, and we had to read from Philippians. And not being the best of students, I guess, I started from the beginning of Philippians. And Philippians begins to the saints. And as someone who had some Roman Catholic background, I thought, well, I'm reading someone else's mail. This isn't written to me.
Hmm.
And the priest, I trust, gave an explanation in line with Catholic theology, but it didn't fit. It didn't feel right. And so I kind of distanced myself from the church, and my parents were not objecting to that. They were okay with me going, but they weren't going themselves. And it wasn't until I was in my first year of college that some dear friends invited me to a college and career Bible study. And probably like most freshmen in college, I thought, you have all the answers, but I went to the Bible study, and the pastor was so gracious and kind. And he said, you know what, there's been a lot of great questions that have been asked. Let's go through them. And that ended up being the Heidelberg Catechism. And the Lord, by his grace, drew me to faith in him. And shortly thereafter, I was involved in the youth ministry. And then when I was looking for seminary, I wanted to go to one where I could get some additional training for pastoral care and counseling, because not only my own family experience, but just seeing some of the things that go on in the church, there's a lot that goes on between Monday and Sunday. And to handle that appropriately and biblically, I wanted to do what I could to get that sort of counseling background. And so I ended up going to Reformed Theological Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi. And there I earned a master's in marriage and family therapy and counseling, and then the Master of Divinity to be ordained. And from there, I then received a call from Trinity back in 2010. So that's kind of the loop around of the story of how I got here.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because I have a little bit of that as well. Because when I first was called into youth ministry, I wasn't ever expecting to. And it was kind of a slap in the face right away. I think I had been a youth pastor, youth director, for about 5 months when we had one of the girls from our youth group come into, like, hey, can I talk to you? And she stepped into my office after youth group and was like, I just want you to know I attempted suicide last night and I was unsuccessful, but I don't know what to do. And I remember, like, I have no idea what to do in this situation. And so now thankfully we had some good people in our church, and they walked me through it, and we ended up handling it really well. And she's between us and God's grace, she's a functioning member of society. She's doing pretty good, I think. But that kind of shook me, and I'm like, I need some tools for this. And so when I went back to get my bachelor's, on my road to getting a master's of divinity, I was a Christian counseling major. And now I have a Christian counseling certificate, which seems very unimpressive, but I pulled out right before I got the bachelor's in Christian counseling and switched over to a bachelor's of ministry, because I thought that was going to prep me for seminary a little bit more. But I'm really thankful for the training that I had in counseling, because I feel like it's helped me. I don't know, it shaped me really well to be able to have some good, helpful conversations.
Absolutely. And I think what Christian counseling is, I think in some ways that's kind of become a cliche term, but true Christian counseling, I think, is at its core, it's discipleship. It's taking the gospel and applying it to the unique pains, hurts, and sins of an individual, and then walking them to the cross, and then helping them in their walk with the Lord. And so even though we refer to it as Christian counseling, at its core, I really just think it's discipleship on a more one-on-one basis.
Yeah, 100%. And I still remember it was a really good school. And so they really emphasize even the work of the Holy Spirit in counseling and kind of being in tune with that. And I remember sitting down with a kid, and he was really struggling with something. He couldn't figure out what was going on, and I didn't really know what was going on. And I still remember talking to him, and I just had this like passing thought, and I'm like, oh, I should ask him. It was kind of like, it felt like a nudge by the Spirit. And I'm like, so what's your relationship with your girlfriend right now? And he was like, that seems odd. And then we start digging in, and it's like, oh, lo and behold, here's where things are. Here's the nudge,
Right.
And yeah. But yeah, I think the same thing, like much, really not much. I would say all pastoral care is just discipleship, right? We're helping people understand what it means to live in the grace and knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ, and in their difficulties and in their joys, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. When it comes to Christian discipleship, Christian counseling, I think that one of the things the church does that's really heartbreaking is they like to farm it out. And there's a certain understanding of that, because as a pastor, if you don't have any sort of training or experience in that can be very overwhelming for the pastor. But to the degree that you're able to take care of those things in house, I think all the better. Because when you farm it out to counseling, a counseling center or whatever it might be, you don't know what their worldview is necessarily. Even within the broad term of Christian counseling, that can mean a lot of things to different people. And so the more that you can disciple them and counsel them from the church, I think it's all the better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been actually the fact that I do have some kind of degree and some study in Christian counseling. It's actually helped me get a better idea of these different Christian counseling agencies that are around. And I'll call them up and I'll talk to them. And I pretty quickly get a feeling like, oh, yeah, we're not going to send people in your direction. Right. There's not that many actually that I'm comfortable sending congregants to. I end up still doing most of it myself. What would you say? At what point do you recommend to people, or do you guys say like, oh, maybe this is something where we should bring in a Christian counselor? Is there a moment where you kind of, yeah?
Well, I don't know. That's kind of difficult to answer, only because counseling is such an art, in the sense that every person, every story is going to have variables. I think when it comes to but to attempt to answer your question, I think one of the things is when you're getting into situations where there is abusive children, and these sort of things, you want to do all that you can to ensure that the children are in safe environments. And as a pastor, you are required to report, and so it's important that you adhere to those requirements, those laws. So I think certainly involving other, those sort of agencies when there's abuse involved. I think too, it's important to get others involved when it is someone of the opposite sex. So if I'm counseling, for example, a woman, I'm going to do all that I can to work my way out of a job, if you will, to ensure, is she being discipled by another woman? Because there is a uniqueness and a beauty to a woman discipling a woman. We see that biblically, that is what they're called to do. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't counsel a woman, but it means that for that long-term discipleship, I want to pair her with a woman who can walk alongside of her, so that I'm not stepping into an environment that would be unwise, whether in practice or even in optics.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah. And I've even told people, or other pastors, like when you get to a point where you're like, hey, this is not the best analogy, but above my pay grade, right? We're like, hey, I need to, and maybe the better is I need to bring in some support, right? And so you're looking to send them to a counselor. I'm like, it's actually not a handoff. It's like you're bringing somebody in alongside, and you, like, as the pastor, you're should be still walking alongside this person throughout that, even if you're like, hey, we need to bring in good Christian counseling agency. It's like you're still checking in with them. You should be still meeting with them regularly, because that's pretty essential.
Oh yeah, and it's, as the pastor, you're their shepherd. You're the shepherd of their soul, and so to farm that out to another and kind of absolve yourself of responsibility is a delinquency of responsibility there. So
Yeah.
absolutely, even if in those situations where it can seem a little overwhelming or above your pay grade, to nevertheless ensure that you're still maintaining that responsibility of responsibility to that person. And to your point, I appreciate what you said about ensuring that though a person may identify themselves as a Christian counselor, to do a little bit of legwork into that, because often what passes for Christian counseling is humanistic counseling with a prayer at the end. And that's not Christian counseling, because they're not thinking in the same biblical terms that we are. And so
Yeah.
they're going to have different objectives. They're going to have different means to get there. And that can be really detrimental. They may also not have a view of the church where the elders and the pastors are the shepherds, and they almost become a church in and of themselves, where this person is maybe vacillating between, well, my counselor said this or my pastor said that. Which one do I listen to? And we want to make sure that we're all on the same team, moving toward the same biblical objectives.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Nothing is more frustrating. And I've had to deal with this multiple times where it doesn't even feel like, it's just very true that the counselor is actively undermining the work that I'm doing it with someone in my pastoral care. And they come in and you're like, wait, what just happened? And then you start digging and you're like, oh, your counselor led you down a whole different path. And that's, yeah. So yeah, I tell people regularly, I would say, and maybe I'm just, I guess, cynical, but maybe it's like 10% of Christian counselors that I am like, I feel comfortable sending people there. Maybe that's too low of a number. I'm not sure, but I've seen too much, quote unquote Christian counseling that follows all of the secular stuff and just kind of sprinkles a little Jesus on top.
Yeah, and because of my background, I do have other pastors call me, hey, is there anyone that you recommend? And with the exception of a very few, and maybe I'm just a counseling snob, I don't know, but there's not a lot that I would say, yep, this is someone that I would recommend. There are a few, don't get me wrong. They're just very godly men and women. I'm like, yes, that's the person you need to talk to. But unfortunately, it seems like that is an area that Christians, the church, is not doing a good job of equipping. And I feel bad for even seminaries. I don't know how well they're equipping pastors for these responsibilities. I remember when I was strictly within my MDiv class or coursework, I think there was one class on pastoral care, and the running joke was that it would just refer it out, and I fear that is what is passing for a lot of pastoral care in seminaries.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is the quote unquote going wisdom in many seminaries. And it's more of I think they're thinking more from a liability standpoint, right? They're like, well, if you're counseling this person and something happens, you might be liable for misconduct, neglect, blah, 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 if you should have sent them off. And so it's just quicker and easier to send them off. And, but if we recognize Christian counseling as discipleship and faith formation, or you could even, maybe this is not the same as discipleship, but worldview formation, right? Part of what you're doing is shaping the way they see the world so that they see it the way that Christ wants them to see the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're sending them to a counselor who is actively seeking to shape their worldview, the way they see the world in a different way, it undermines everything. It actually is not helpful. And so, and even, I guess I'm fairly known for being publicly frustrated with some of the biblical counseling classes through the seminary as well, because and it's because I had my little bit of training. I don't want to overblow how much training I had in it, but I remember sitting back and they were going through this stuff, and I'm like, "Oh, so you're talking about narrative therapy?" And he's like, I'm like, "Yeah, I know what narrative therapy is. It's all this." And like, "Oh, you're talking about, this kind of therapy." And I was like, "Okay, so you're just teaching us all of these other therapies, and just kind of putting a little Christian flavoring on it." And I'm like, "That's not the same." Like, it's good to understand those things, and of course, there's truth, right, in a lot of them, not all of them. Carl Jung's philosophy of that all of the goodness is within you. There's no truth in there. That one's completely garbage.
Right.
But anyways, there's some truth in there, but we have something better to offer. And what would you say would be probably the biggest misconception pastors have when it comes to doing pastoral care and pastoral counseling? I mean, I know they're different, but
Yeah, I think that there's this sense, and maybe this is a struggle for a lot of guys, is that we feel as though when we're presented with a problem, we need to instantly give an answer. And though people are often coming to us because they are seeking an answer, fundamentally, before we even get to that answer, we have a responsibility to establish trust, to build that relationship so that we can glean as much as we can to truly understand what's going on in that individual's life. So I think as guys, and I do that, I bring this up like in premarital counseling, like your wife doesn't want you to solve her problems. She is not a transmission that needs to be fixed. She wants you to hear her. She wants you to understand her. She wants you to express that you understand what she's feeling. And that in and of itself can be incredibly cathartic, and it builds trust. So that when you get to the point of having to give wisdom, give direction, those sort of things, they're actually going to believe you. They're more inclined to listen to you. And so I think if pastors just stepped back and realized in that first meeting, you don't have to solve it. You just have to build the relationship, listen to them, and be willing to have a healthy curiosity when you hear those inconsistencies. When, as you in your example, you sense that I need to ask him about his girlfriend. Ask those questions, explore those things, because as you then go through the process as you're discipling, you're going to be able to have a greater understanding of what the real root is. Because I really believe that there's only essentially 4 or 5 root issues that manifest themselves in a variety of ways. So when a person comes for counseling, I truly believe that they're coming because they're wrestling with guilt, fear, anger, or loneliness. Now, obviously, there's going to be other things, and they're going to express themselves through different circumstances. But at their core, those 4 are really what drive people to counseling or to need to talk to the pastor. And so if you can kind of go into the situation, just first off, listening, understanding, empathizing. And as you kind of pick through all the things that they're saying, which one of those 4 seems to be what they're really wrestling with? Is it a matter of guilt, fear, anger, or loneliness? And we see biblically, the scriptures give us the answers to all 4 of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've built that relationship, you're able to clearly understand it, and you're then able to bring them to the gospel. You're able to bring them to the scriptures to address whatever fundamental issue is at heart.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I think like the wisdom of pastoral care and counseling fits along the lines of the same wisdom that I received going into like church revitalization, or even just stepping into a new church, right? The wisdom I received from an older pastor is step into the church and don't change anything for the first year because you have no idea what actually is happening. And all the problems that you think you see are probably not the real problems. There's deeper things going on. And the church has no idea what their problems are because they're just kind of used to swimming in that water. So he said, just take the first year to spend a lot of time learning, asking questions, digging deeper, building trust, like you said. And so I think of counseling the same way. Like when that first meeting, asking questions, just kind of digging and building some trust there. That's really helpful.
And to only undergird what you were saying, one of the things that I have heard and I think is just absolutely true is people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that sense of, do they know that you care? Or are you going, because no one wants to be a problem that other person feels that they can just solve. They want the relationship. Do you genuinely care about me? And the way we can easily express that is, through our nonverbals, eye contact, those sort of things, but also by just having a healthy curiosity. I mean, I imagine if you've met someone new and you're like, hey, what's your name? How old are you? Do you go to school? I'm sure you do this with the students all the time. Tell me about yourself. I want to get to know you. And you draw them out. That makes them feel more comfortable because it's expressing that you care. And if they believe that you care, then as you have that opportunity to speak that truth into them, they'll believe it. Because they're not just a problem that you're trying to fix. They're a person that you care about. And that makes a big difference in the process, I think.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, no, that's really good stuff. I think it, like you said, and, I do talk to people a lot too, when, because a lot of people feel like they were not prepared for pastoral care and counseling in seminary. And I'm like, that's true. But I think even if you had the best preparation, you still really have no idea what you're doing when you're stepping into some of these situations. And I think it requires some level of humility too, right? Of just, I still remember, like, I've had a couple of really, really tough pastoral care visits I've had to do. And one was while I was still like pretty early in ministry, but one of my friends committed suicide and left his wife with a 2-year-old, and she was pregnant.
Wow.
And she wouldn't talk to anybody but me, I guess. Her dad was like, she'll only talk to you. And I remember thinking, I have no idea what to tell her. Yeah. And I'm like, all I did was the whole drive over to their house was just prayed, Lord help, Lord help, Lord help. Give me wisdom. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to trust that you're going to give me what I need to speak into this situation and to be a presence. And, I walked away and I'm like, I still don't even remember what I said, the questions that I asked. And she was like, that was so helpful. Like, I don't even know. Right. But it was just me constantly praying, Lord, please give me what I need to be a blessing to her at this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate what you're saying there, because what you're expressing is one of the things that we often overlook when it comes to counseling. And that is simply the ministry of presence. When people are going through something of varying difficulty, one of the ways the evil one works and tries to take advantage of those situations is he tries to isolate us. He tries to make us lonely. No one knows what you're feeling. No one knows what you're thinking. No one's been through what you've been through. And we start to believe that and we isolate. And we're right where he wants us. But, and we can, and I think guys especially can struggle with this. We want to have that magic thing to say. And as ministers, we want to have that perfect scripture verse that's just going to make everything better. But the reality is, a lot of times what people need to know in those moments is the truth. You're not alone. I'm not walking away from you. You're not going to walk this unknown, frightening journey alone. I'm right here with you. I may not know every step, and neither do you, but we're going to walk it together. Something about that ministry of presence. I I was in seminary as a hospice chaplain, and one of the things that, especially as a young seminarian, you always want to have the right thing to say in those situations. And the Lord is really gracious to me, and I just sense like you don't always need to say something. People don't remember what you said to them at the greeting line at the visitation. The fact that you were there is what they're going to remember. And there's something about the ministry of presence going into a counseling situation in and of itself is incredibly cathartic and healing. Just as, because it's so antithetical to the message of the evil one. You're alone. No one knows what you're going through. And to your point too, I think we can pridefully think, oh, I have to have all the right answers and I need to fix this situation. But to the wisdom that you just shared, there is a great humility in saying, I don't know the answer either, but we're going to go to the cross together and God's going to help us in this situation. We're reliant on his spirit. We're reliant on his word. So let's walk this journey together and see where he leads us. And I've never been let down by him. In doing counseling all these years, he's never let me down. And, you're talking about being overwhelmed. When I had to do my clinical hours for my counseling degree, my first 5 clients, 3 of them were minors who had been sexually abused. Now, as a single man who was 25 at the time, I was so overwhelmed by that. And yet God worked mightily in those situations to bring healing. It took time, and there's no microwave answer to those difficulties, but to see the way the Lord could work even in those overwhelming situations, it taught me a fantastic lesson, is that when you walk into that room where you're counseling someone, you're not the true counselor. The Holy Spirit is. And he's given us his word. That is the means by which he is going to bring that healing. And you're simply the instrument that the Lord uses.
That's all we have for this week. If you want to help us out and support the Messy Reformation, another thing you can do is sign up for our newsletter through Substack. That way you'll get episodes and summaries sent directly into your email inbox. It also gives us the ability to communicate with our audience, which is one of the biggest struggles of a podcast. So head over to the Messy Reformation on Substack and sign up for our newsletter. But until then, don't forget this is Christ's church, and he bought it with his blood. And we've been warned that wolves will come in trying to destroy the flock. So keep a close watch on your life and on your doctrine. Preach the word in season and out of season, and keep fighting the good fight in this messy Reformation.